Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to Utah. The story is Utah, as you can see on our signage this year. We're thrilled to have you here. We are the festival host state. We love having Sundance in our backyard every year, and we're especially happy to be partnering this year with LMGI. Such a great fit for us. We work with location scouts on a daily basis, and so it's lovely to have these fantastic people here. I am going to turn it over to Puck Stair, Puck, from LMGI, to tell you a little bit more.
Thank you, and thank you all for braving the snow and the everything to be here. And a big thank you to our co-sponsor, the Utah Film Commission. Nice. It's been lovely working with you all.
Yeah.
So my name is Puck Stair, and I am a location scout and manager. I am also on the board of the Location Managers Guild International, where I serve as the chair, one of the chair people of the Regional International Committee, and they put me in charge. So the format today, I'll do a couple words of introduction. I'll introduce our speakers. We have some questions for them, and then at the end we'll open it up to questions from you. And then after that, I hear there are some festivities, so hopefully you can stick around. Quickly about myself, as I said, I'm a location manager and scout. I started as an English teacher. You'll find that many of us started in a different capacity. I've worked on all kinds of projects, TV, commercials, features. Ones you may have heard of or maybe not include No Country for Old Men, Two Guns, 3:10 to Yuma, John Carter of Mars, Independence Day Resurgence that came out this year. And that's enough about me. So we're going to go, I got them to sit in order, which is great. They don't usually pay attention. So Nancy Haecker, on your left, has won numerous awards for her work in locations. Her experience covers the spectrum of production from blockbusters to indie films, television, cable, commercials, and print. She attended the prestigious Newhouse School at Syracuse University and received a fine arts degree from the University of Arizona. She served 3 years as president of the Location Managers Guild International. Her career began in Arizona as a location scout on Kevin Costner's The Postman, then Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday.
I was only 18.
Followed by The Patriot, Three Kings, America's Sweetheart, Rat Race, Pay It Forward, Ocean's 11, 8 Mile, Phone Booth, Kill Bill, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Lucky You, Into the Wild, The Judge Wild, and The Revenant, and that's not even all of them. Her television and cable credits include Marvel's Agent Carter, Sleepy Hollow, The Catch, House, The Goodwin Games, Goodwin Games, Carpoolers, and HBO's The Pacific. Currently, she is about to be, you say you are, but you are about to be scouting in Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and the Dominican Republic for a feature film. That is Nancy. Next.
Yeah. I feel good, right? Thanks, Puck.
Next, we have Andrew Hodge, one of your locals. Born and raised in New Jersey and Wisconsin, Andrew was introduced to clay animation filmmaking and cinematography during his schooling. He quickly fell in love with photography and the filmmaking process and toured the United States to photograph the country. After settling in Salt Lake City in 1990, he established a career in sports photography and location scouting and management. Sports photography. Including assisting renowned filmmaker Bud Greenspan at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympic Games of 2002. His work has been featured in numerous movies, commercials, and popular television series, including Blood and Oil, Everwood, Granite Flats, and The Tree of Life. He's worked with directors from Steven Soderbergh to Terrence Malick to Gus Van Sant. Andrew, I asked him to talk about himself. He said, "Scouting is infectious to me. Even when I'm not working, I'm exploring, shooting photos, traveling to new locations. In a new city, I'll scout restaurants, hotels, museums, anything unique to the city. I love to capture the day-to-day, how people commute or sit in a park relaxing on a Sunday afternoon. And when he's not out taking photos, he enjoys skiing, kayaking, mountain biking, running, paragliding, camping, fishing, and anything else that is an excuse for being outdoors."
Nice.
Next, we have the lovely Laura Sode-Matteson. She's a supervising location manager. She was born and raised in Kailua, Oahu, Hawaii. and graduated from the University of Hawaii with a degree in social work. She got her start in the film business in Hawaii and then moved to California. While working for Aaron Spelling, she found her niche as a location manager. She eventually joined the Teamsters 399 and became a member of the LMGI. Laura likens the role of location manager to being a perpetual tourist. She says, "You're always searching and exploring new locations, meeting interesting people while gaining rare insights into their lives. It's a unique and challenging job that can be so taxing you wonder why you are doing it, but at the same time so stimulating and rewarding you can't imagine doing anything else." Being from Hawaii, Laura's been fortunate to work in her home state on many movies like Jurassic Park 3, Battleship, Jurassic World, and the more recent Jumanji. She says about working in Hawaii, "Hawaii has great jungles without snakes or alligators or other critters." David Smith. After leaving University of Utah to join the crew of Halloween 5. Wait, so you're a dropout? After leaving the University of Utah to join the crew of Halloween 5, David Smith quickly moved into the locations department in 1990. He's worked on many projects from The Sandlot to Independence Day Resurgence. Credits include location manager on budget-challenged movies of the week to unlimited budget national commercials, music videos, and still shoots. An early adopter of digital scouting, David has maintained one of the longest-running online location libraries, which includes locations from California, Utah, Nevada, and Colorado. In addition, he developed and perfected the use of eco-friendly flooring protection, Loco mats, and turned them into a business in Los Angeles, open since 2004. He's been a member of the LMGI since its inception and can often be found getting lost on a motorcycle in the Utah backcountry. And last, we have Scott Trimble. Scott has locations scouted for blockbuster movies such as Jurassic World and The Avengers, and he's won awards for The Circle, Star Trek Into Darkness, Transformers, and Mission Impossible 3. He's a member of both the Location Managers Guild International and Hollywood Teamsters 399, and he's a regular speaker at Comic-Con International. He grew up in San Francisco, graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in archaeology. He's traveled to all 50 states and 5 continents, and he lives in Los Angeles with his opera singer wife, Melinda Ehrlich Trimble. And now we're going to show a quick reel of some of the work that we have done. Enjoy.
message?
Yes.
All right. In an era of filming on green screen, CGI, and virtual reality, is filming on location necessary anymore?
Yes. Well, even if you film an entire movie on a green screen stage, you're still going to need imagery to put into that green screen. And it's a much smaller crew. You know, we call it a visual effects plate unit, or maybe it would be a second unit, but we'll go out and we'll still shoot that. And it's actually great to work on because it's so much easier. The logistics, you know, you can get into places that are much more sensitive because maybe you only have a crew of 10 to 25 instead of, you know, 100 to 250. So, yeah, we're still going to need to fill that. And, you know, even without that, you know, there's still the realism of doing things out on location that you can't still easily cheat with computers.
I think it's just, it doesn't eliminate scouting, or it doesn't eliminate being, oops, sorry. It doesn't eliminate scouting or being on location. I just think it's become another very strong medium, you know, and as technology changes, everything in our industry changes, something's added. I know we were scouting for the remake of Magnificent Seven, and you know, you go to, they wanted to do it in incentive states, and we're looking at Shreveport, Louisiana. And so if anyone saw the remake of Mag 7, the western town is on a farmer's, you know, some farmer's land, pretty flat. It's Shreveport. We had some trees and a river, but everything around it was CGI'd in, and it looked pretty good. But I don't think it eliminates what we do, or scouts, or being on location. I just think it's become another piece of this industry.
I think as long as the resolution keeps increasing, if we get to the, you know, 4K, if you look at something on 4K as opposed to 1080p, it's obvious it's not on location if they're doing it on a green screen. You know, we have experience with that on Independence Day, where they were saying, "Oh, our plate shots are going to look like they're standing on the salt," and they didn't look like they're standing on the salt. You just can't recreate that. So that gives me hope that they'll still need us for something.
So it's another tool only. Good. Describe a time when you used one location to be another, and why did you have to do it that way?
I think it's pretty common. We use what we call cheats all the time. Right now I'm in episodic television, so it's really schedule-driven and dollars. You know, nobody wants to move Teamsters, a whole crew. So if I have a major location, let's say I'm at an airport or something that is anchoring my locations, it's the location we have to have. And then everything else does become a cheat. If I need someone's kitchen, if it's someone's backyard or whatever it is, and it's not in that vicinity, I don't keep base camp in the same place, then everything becomes a cheat. So cheats a lot of time, or one reason we have cheats is it's time and money. So I look for cheats all the time.
In the days of security too, on Legally Blonde 2, they had searched every state capital in the country, and Utah's happened to be the closest match for the federal capital. So the project came here just because of that fact. So you know, it was open to us and available to use, which the federal never would have been able to use.
I work on a lot of science fiction projects, so we have to fake other planets and the interior of spaceships. So there's always the fictional stuff that we got to find too. And then I'm based in LA, so if a show is shooting in LA, you know, we're also cheating the entire world out of there as much as possible. Yeah.
But you also shoot other countries. We shot for G.I. Joe in the Czech Republic for Paris. So sometimes you'll go to another country because it's cheaper, there's a good labor pool, but you can't actually do it like in Paris. It would be impossible. There's transportation strikes every other week, so you do it for that too.
There's also always the interesting interpretations of how the location should look when you're cheating it. I worked on a movie that we filmed entirely in LA, but it took place in Sacramento, and the director and production designer kept insisting, there's no palm trees, no palm trees, you can't have any palm trees. Yet, if any of you have ever been to Sacramento, it's filled with palm trees. But that was the vision that they wanted. That was their fictional version of Sacramento, and so we have to follow that.
Yeah. Wild. We did, it's the Pacific Crest Trail, and she starts in Mexico and she goes all the way up, and we shot all of it in Oregon. So the job was to cheat everything, the Mojave, the Sierra Nevadas. And so I think it's actually more common than not. You know, you can't go into a bank and shoot a bank during banking hours, so most locations, or a lot of locations certainly are a cheat.
Do you find yourselves cheating more these days, the same or less?
I'm working in an incentive state, so yes. So when you're in Atlanta, and Atlanta, I'm happy to be in Atlanta, in Georgia, but I think it has its limitations. And so, I find myself cheating a lot of things. Yeah.
I spent 2 months on the movie Pixels, based in LA at the time, and I was researching New Orleans, Atlanta, Boston, Montreal, Toronto, and basically for every one of those cities I had to figure out, can we do this entire movie there, even though it doesn't take place at any of those cities. And we eventually ended up with Toronto. I didn't work on the rest of the film, but the crew out there, they were able to pull off the whole movie in that city. And like Nancy said, it's based on the incentives that brought it in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated. It was supposed to be California. They shot it in New York for the incentives.
Right.
Yeah.
Money.
Money. It's
Right.
all money.
I recently got a script about the Iditarod dog sled race that takes place in Alaska, and they asked me if it could be shot in Louisiana or Georgia. Not kidding. True story.
What did you say?
I said no.
Do you all think that doubling locations is getting easier now that there's sort of a Starbucks and a Walmart on every corner?
No.
Or is it harder now?
It just makes the producers happier.
Yeah, they like their Starbucks.
Right.
Gentrification is hard. It's for those of us working on historic or period. It's getting very difficult to find those locations, secure them, and especially 360 or being outside. It's become very difficult. Los Angeles is a great example. All of us here 15 years ago, I think it's fair to say it was a ghost town. Downtown Los Angeles was a ghost town. And then, as we all know, then you have the warehouse district and the arts district, and you could do all your night shooting and your chase scenes and people shooting at each other. And now it's very difficult to do any of that downtown Los Angeles because it's lofts and coffee houses, and it can't do it. And then the warehouse district went, and the arts district is now all hip, and it's very difficult.
We're literally running out of parking spaces for all the trucks and trailers there. I mean,
Right.
it's getting to be like San Francisco or Manhattan.
Green lanes.
And the green lanes, the bike lanes. Yeah.
Nice segue, thank you. Given that location management has been described as the only job that starts with the Kremlin and ends with janitorial closets, how do you personally handle such a broad scope?
I get a lot of assistants and have them do the shit work.
Absolute trust in your vendors.
Well, the thing about being in locations is you're the first person in, you're the last person out. If you're scouting with the director and above the line and the producers, that's fun. But your responsibility is to finding the locations for the director, but also in making the locations happy when you leave. That I find the importance of that responsibility and taking care of the locations equal to that of finding locations for the director. So if it means picking up cigarette butts or trash just to get yourself out of there and make sure everything is clean, I expect everyone in my department to do it. It's just part of the job. You cannot have an ego when it comes to responsibility.
That's a great tagline.
The job is big. I mean, everyone on this panel has been responsible for the aesthetic value of a project. That's huge. That's a huge contribution to the picture, to have that, to be part of the creative team. And then you're working with budgets that are in millions and millions of dollars, and you're negotiating, and you're supervising crews, and you're dealing with government officials, and you're permitting. The job itself runs the gamut. It really takes a lot of talent. And then scouting, you'll find location scouts. Some of them are just awesome. They're fine art photographers. I mean, they can really shoot. And then some of us are hacks. But because the job is so diverse, there's a lot going on, and a lot of you wear a lot of hats, and you have to know how to do a lot of work, different types of work, from picking up the cigarette butts to creating the aesthetic value of a project.
Do you ever feel that sometimes you're sort of hired to say no to your bosses?
Wow. No.
like, no, don't do this, or you're going to put yourself in risk if you shoot on these train tracks?
You know we work in the film industry, right? Right? So it's a yes. Yes.
Yes,
we're hired
and.
to say
Yes,
yes.
but.
Yes, we're hired to say yes.
But we're practicing on how to say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. I mean, we have.
Well, what I'm asking is, we're responsible on the one hand for the aesthetic look at the film,
Right.
and then at the other end of the spectrum, sometimes we're responsible for making sure the film is legally protected.
Yes. Right.
And those two may not necessarily be the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
But we do say no sometimes. But our immediate task then is to find an alternate solution. So we have to be creative, and we have to tell them, no, you can't do that, but you can do this. And so it's a constant juggling act to try to get the creative look they want while still being safe and have all the logistics work out.
Stuck.
I mean, I do feel that producers rely on us to know our job, from what you can do in a neighborhood, cultural, even cultural, being specific culturally. So yeah, I mean, they depend on us to know those pieces of our job and to remind them of that. Absolutely.
And it goes over better if you say someone else said no.
Right.
And I'm just relaying the answer.
So in addition to being the eyes and ears of say, the director and the production designer, you're also sort of the first in from the legal staff. The eyes and ears from them, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
if you're talking about shooting a location and contracting that location for visual representation and being broadcast, again, running the how big is this job? So we deal with contracts all the time, and yes, we have to do that correctly.
Describe one of your secrets for success for filming on location.
Andrew.
Yeah, where have you been, Andrew?
Having a good team
Yeah.
around you to help you out that has the same goal and vision. So hiring good people to be with you.
That's true.
I also say make good use of technology. It's out there, so use it all. Like whether it's GPS or like my iPhone has 18,000 contacts in it because I have every single location that I've ever scouted. So that I could be in a van with the director, and then he or she suddenly says like, "Hey, let's go somewhere," and then I have the contacts immediately. So use that. I keep my pictures super organized. 500,000 pictures, all broken down by country, state, county, city, type of place, and then the place itself, and then dates of every time that I've been there. And that helps you too, because when you start a new movie, you can pull up all those pictures super quickly to be able to present some things right off the bat to get some early feedback before you even go out scouting.
I invented an app to help, so come talk to me later. I'll tell you all about it.
I think knowing when it comes to scouting, because that can be that can be a big job as well. Knowing who calls the shots, who has the power. It's not always your director, and then understanding those dynamics. So who really is going to tell you, who are you really pleasing? And then how do they work together? How does the production designer work with the director and work with how much is he influenced by the DP? Sometimes your producer is calling his shots. Sometimes it's about money. And so you'll find that person is the bottom line. So before you go out to scout, I think you have to know a lot of those things. And then about those people. Does the DP always want a light source? Will he shoot white? Will he shoot a house facing west? Et cetera, et cetera. And so once you start honing in on their styles, even a production designer who, if he's done different genres, if you look at their work, you still get an idea of what they like and how they shoot and what they design. And so you can start honing in on how you scout and what you scout. It really saves a lot of time.
But it's also when you go into a location and going into a new state, whether it's a county, a state, a country, I think that going in with an attitude of respect for where you're going, understanding the community that you're now being involved with, and understanding what their needs are as well when you take into account your filming, I think is really important. And also involving the locals. You get so much information from the locals on how things are done, and sort of like when in Rome, be respectful.
I find I like to prepare incredibly thoroughly and then be open to serendipity. And there's a wonderful magic that comes from combining those two. All of you have filmed in Utah. Would you do it again? Why or why not?
But of course, because it has the best film commission in the world.
Puck, we only want to film in Utah.
Oh, all right.
That's it.
Besides the other amazing, otherworldly locations, it's pretty unique in that way. And doing John Carter Mars, we were in Mars everywhere. We looked, and it was beautiful.
Anytime you can get support and a good film office, good locals, good film commission, that's everything. It's everything. Contacts, hands-on, they're smart. I mean, it's really everything. And Utah really is top line. They're really good. So it really helps you. It's easy. And then I think people still like to shoot what places that they like and feels good. And every time I bring a scout to Utah, they love the place. It feels good, from the vibe to the people to the food to the coffee houses, and it does influence whether someone wants to film here or not.
So are you saying there's an intangible quality to locations?
Yeah.
Plus, we have Andrew's app.
That's right. Yeah.
We are here at Sundance, obviously. What advice would you share with a producer looking to shoot an independent film on location?
Don't skip on the prep. Couple extra weeks can make all the difference in the world.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I've worked for producers that said, I'm going to give you 3 weeks of prep and here's the script. And then I've worked with producers that have said, I'm going to give you 8 weeks of prep and here's the script. And the 8 weeks of prep always made the show go completely smooth. If they had to change the schedule, we knew everybody. It's always the person that you can't reach on that one house on that street. That's the guy that's going to come and kick in your trucks because you didn't get a hold of him. And there just wasn't enough time with all the other jobs and locations that you have to schedule to get a hold of that person. No matter how hard you try, you can send them emails, letters, knock on their door, whatever. There'll always be somebody that you never got in touch with. And that's the person that will always be there on the day you're shooting. Every time. So more prep, more time that you can really get in and absorb the area that you're filming.
And not just prep overall, but prep for a location manager, because she said independent projects, and sometimes some of the smaller shoots think they can get away without having a location manager, and so they'll try to do it themselves, and then they'll call us in at the last minute like, we need help. So make sure you get us in early enough. And if it's a super tiny, like no budget kind of thing too, you can always still contact us, for advice. I mean, I get emails all the time from people, and if I have a chance, I will respond and I'll give them, some ideas, because a lot of us started out in independent filmmaking as well, so we're always happy to help.
And I think to follow up on something Laura said earlier, I think we're all invested in preserving filmable locations, and if an independent film is badly prepped and leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, it's going to affect all of us down the line.
Because we've all had that experience where we got burned because somebody else had burned the person.
Coming from films with a lot of money, that happens. Not from independent films.
All of that. So I don't just delineate between the independent and studio.
You don't discriminate?
No. Not at all.
Any other advice for independent producers on location?
Don't come in with an attitude like you're Hollywood. Be respectful.
Okay. Has climate change or extreme weather impacted your work or your filming days?
All I can, I know that 10 years ago, if I was looking for snow, I found it, right? And recently, I'm hunting for snow. We certainly have more fire watches, and so you can't film or you can't do your pyro, those types of things, and whether they're related to climate control. I just know it seems to be more frequent. Can't use pyro, can't burn, can't have smoke. We have warnings, safety issues, and not finding snow, or even rivers that are moving, and having to then find a place, a river that has a dam, and you can release the dam, and you can move the water. So that has been a lot more frequent in the last decade for me.
And for us in California, too, we've had this terrible drought for years. And so that's made it harder, especially like finding green grassy hills, which, every car commercial wants. And, we have to go farther and farther away to find that kind of thing. And, rivers are dried up and, it's been tough.
I'm working on a project in Hawaii, and last summer we expected a dry summer, so we planned our production accordingly, and it rained like crazy, which was totally unexpected. And now in the winter, I'm trying to grow some grass back that normally would pop back because there's lots of it liquid falling from the skies, and I was just there, and it feels like it's parched and dry, which is unusual for January. So I think that it's changing in Hawaii. I mean, I think the tropicals are changing, but it's the same. The whole weather climate is changing, like in California.
Is that thirsty grass or that parched ground going to cost any extra money for production?
Yes, probably, because if it doesn't grow back in a timely fashion, we're going to have to go in and plant grass, and we're going to have to bring in water trucks, and we're going to have to water. So I'm hoping that they just got some rain today, so I'm hoping that it grows.
Chasing snow is pretty expensive. If you're shooting and you're in Colorado or wherever you are, and you have to go to Argentina to find snow, it's incredibly expensive to chase.
Which you experienced recently on the Revenant.
Well, I was very early on. In fact, I was the first scout on the Revenant, and I wasn't on the end. But yes, they had to do that towards the end, at the end. They couldn't find snow, and I will say that very early on, there was a scene that didn't make the movie. And Scott, I don't know when you got the script if it was in there, but. Alejandro wanted that last scene to be in ice. He wanted those guys to fall through ice. And so we had early discussions on where we could really find ice, where it was going to be consistent. And I'm from Alaska. I spent a lot of years in Alaska, and I couldn't even assure them that we would have ice in Alaska. So that was part of the equation. And again, I think a decade ago, I'm not sure we would have had that conversation.
I was helping on if you've seen the new Lincoln Continental commercials where Matthew McConaughey is driving in the water, they wanted to shoot that on the salt flats. But the agency said no because they didn't want the bad press of bringing in water and wasting the water to flood the flats to do the shot. We couldn't do it on the actual flats. We were going to do it on an area close by, but they didn't want the bad press. So it had nothing to do with the location, really. It was just that they didn't want, to look like they're water wasters.
I've encountered a version of that where there's more and more endangered species to work around, more silvery minnows or golden harpies or something, and it's harder and harder to fly a drone or to flood a river or the things that we do. We'll open it up to audience questions in just a minute, but is there anything you all want to add that we haven't covered yet?
Andrew? Yeah, Andrew. What would you like to say, Andrew? I think you've been holding back. Utah.
Right.
Talk about Utah.
I guess just the crews here in Utah are great. We're the one thing that maybe was not spoken about is how willing everybody in Utah seems to be to help from every level of filming, not to mention quick flights to LA.
Thank you. Yeah. Do y'all have any questions? Yeah.
Nancy, I think it was in your credits you had worked in some of the cities that have gotten popular due to the incentive, the Atlantas, New Orleans, Vancouver. Have you ever found yourself in a position where you couldn't film a location that you liked because someone was already there?
Yeah, of course. But that's across the board. I mean, in Los Angeles, we can't, we're all in line. It's a schedule, right? And we're all calling each other. When are you out of there? Are you really going to shoot there? I want it on Thursday. So for location scouts, that's not uncommon. But because the incentive states, for Atlanta, for an example, it's a smaller downtown. And everybody's there, and everybody's shooting. Marvel's shooting there. Everyone's shooting there. So often I can't close a street because someone's already has it, or I can't have a parking lot because someone already has it. Am I answering your question?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
You're on a time schedule too. So.
Right. And again, I don't know everything there is to know about Atlanta. Absolutely not. But the cool-looking warehouses that everybody wants to shoot for their bad guy scene or whatever, there's 6 of them, 7 of them. They're booked. So you have to wait. So yeah, if it's a smaller market and so many productions are there because of the incentives, you are walking on top of each other. Yeah.
I was doing a shoot in Albuquerque recently, and we needed a house, found the house. It was a perfect house, good match. And I called the film commission and said, hey, this is just a heads up. This is what I'm going to request to permit in the next week. And they said, for the first time in about 20 years, they said, no. I said, why? And they said, well, they just had 2 weeks of night filming, and that neighborhood needs a break. So could you please, we're fine with you filming there, we're fine with everything you want to do, but could you please push it 2 weeks and just let everybody sleep? Fortunately, we were able to do that with our actors, but yes. I've also had other instances, speaking of smaller downtowns, where 2 production companies are not exactly in the same place, but we're within a block or 2 of each other, and we have to do radio checks to make sure we're not on the same frequency. And so when the AD says cut or roll, we make sure the right 100 people hear cut and roll.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a location fall through the day of?
Raise your hand if you haven't had a look at it.
Like the day of?
haven't?
The day of?
Tell me what that looked like, or a brief.
It sounds terrifying. I mean, I've had close calls, but it's like what I said earlier about finding creative solutions. Like if you're down to the wire like that and you have to shoot, like you got to work something out. So I've never lost a location, fortunately.
It happens, but it's unacceptable.
Yes.
And especially on some of these bigger films. I mean, it's I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it can't happen, right? In an industry that's all about yes and now and make it happen, it's not like we don't get to let that happen.
Sometimes you can lose a location, but it's not at the last moment.
Yeah.
It's never on that day.
Yeah.
You usually have an opportunity to find something to replace it.
Yeah.
Unless it's due to weather. We've had to move locations last minute, somewhat like today, where it was maybe predicted 1 to 3 inches of snow. A lot of times we'll just get intermittent snow, turns into a big snowstorm, and what they thought they'd be able to film, and just deal with the intermittent snow became too hard, and all of a sudden, they're grabbing for a new location that we weren't, especially on episodic. We didn't think we were going to get hit so hard. All of a sudden, we're scrambling to go inside or just totally different location.
In the early days, a lot of the city organizations hadn't built in an infrastructure where they could communicate between themselves. And so we have one location in Salt Lake that looks this particular way. And we showed up to shoot, and here's the city ready to tear up the street. So we were there. They knew we were there. We had postings up and everything. And then all of a sudden this big, giant bandsaw is coming in to start cutting up the asphalt. And we had to, get everybody on the horn and stop it. And it cost a lot of money. And it was strictly because special events hadn't spoken with engineering and didn't know that they had all scheduled the same thing going on at the same time.
A lot of the work that we do is invisible to the majority of the crew because we're prepping for weeks and weeks ahead of time to get that location. And then when the crew shows up on the day, it's all ready. Like there's a parking lot, there's a street closure, and they don't really think like, how did that all come about? But if you imagine for a second that we lost a location that day and the crew can't shoot, they're all going to know immediately who the location manager is. So we often have that pressure where we'll get in trouble, so to speak, but there's other times when everything goes perfectly smooth and nobody has any idea what went into it and who we were to pull all that off.
Right, like when you walked in this door, you probably didn't think about the fact that the door is unlocked and the lights are on and there's a chair for you to sit down on. Someone had to think about all of that probably months in advance, right? I have a story from No Country for Old Men of a location. Well, it was the house in the final scene where Anton meets the heroine, and they have that scary conversation. And we'd found the perfect house, and it was exactly what the Coen brothers wanted. And this was 3 months out. We negotiated the contract. We were going to repaint parts of it, got the permit, notified the neighborhood it was done. And 3 days before, the owner of the location calls up, and he says to the location manager, "I'm really sorry, but last night I had a dream, and in my dream, God came to me, and he told me not to rent my house to the movie people." Normally, we're really good at negotiating about anything, right? But I was sort of like, what do you say to that, right? So we hustled and went to our backup location, our number 2 choice, and fortunately we were able to pull it off, and the crew never knew the difference. But now when I watch that final scene, I know that story. And now, having had time to think about it, I know what I would do, which is now I would call up all 5 of the local priests and say, "Hey, what are you doing this morning?" So, any other questions? Yeah.
Considering difficulty compared to like an open landscape to the city, what are like the main giant road bumps you hit like with the beautiful landscape or like national parks compared to like a downtown metro area?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
It's a great
actually.
question. Well, I would. It's surprising that they can both be very complicated. It's not easier. It's permitting. I mean, we don't even scout preserved lands. So yeah, there's a lot of issues in what you might think is open landscape. I mean, you might not have to get every neighbor on the block to say yes, you can shoot at midnight, but from endangered species to
Endangered cactus.
right from yeah.
Cryptogenic soil. Cryptogenic soil.
Yeah.
So, well, this another quick story from John Carter of Mars. We were in the middle of Mars in southern Utah, where there is nothing there. I mean, there is nothing living there. And one of the most beautiful things about the place is how quiet it is. And I remember that's for the first time in my life where I heard my own heartbeat in my ears because there's nothing there. And I thought, this would be great. This is easy to permit, right? No. Turns out there's this special cactus, the sclerocacti Wright's fishhook cactus. And this is the only place in the world where it lives. And it's about this big, and it's about this high off the ground, and it is the same color as the ground. And you can only spot it once a year when it maybe, if there's not enough water, put up a little tiny flower that's like the size of half my last pinky digit. And so
We found one.
there's a whole long story. So then we said, okay, well, no problem. We'll just, and it's endangered and it's protected. And we said, no problem. We'll just tell us where they are and we'll stay around them. And the BLM said, we can't tell you where they are. And we said, why? And they said, well, the last time we did that and we flagged them all, someone came in the night before, dug them all up, and sold them on the black market. So we know where they are, but we can't tell you. And by the way, they need like a 5-foot radius each one. So we said, and I don't know if you know this, but so I went out with the botanist for the day, and he found them all, and I looked the other way. Well, he sort of marked it in a GPS, and then he was with us that day with this list of GPS coordinates saying, don't go over there, go that way. Okay, good. Because you really can't see them. They're so small. And so we had to hire him and an extra PA for the day to make sure the crew didn't step on these invisible Wright's fishhook cacti.
I have a
For example.
similar story. Mission Impossible 3, we had a scene that took place on the Chesapeake Bay Tunnel Bridge in Virginia. And we shot their second unit, but we built a replica of the bridge in Los Angeles. It was in the hills above Calabasas. And that's where we did all the stunts and car crashes and everything. But that location had a plant that only existed in that area that actually went extinct back in the 1930s. But what had happened was there were dormant seeds buried underground that nobody knew about that got uncovered when they did a Chevy truck commercial there, and with the mud, and, it spun up, and then all of a sudden this extinct plant came back to life, and so and that was a few years before we got there, so it was pretty established at this point. And so we had to take huge extremes to be able to work the set, which is a track, with cars exploding and everything, and then circle around. We had to avoid all these little clusters of plants in order to protect them.
I got one. I got lots of
We can do this
you
for
see-
hours.
Yeah. You see how complicated. So when I was 9, working on Kevin Costner's The Postman, there was we were at Smith Rock in Bend, Oregon. We were at Smith Rock, and there was a scene that we were playing there, and there's a nesting bald eagle, and right, we don't say no, right? Kevin wants this spot, blah blah blah. So in another lifetime, we would have gone down there, maybe in stake beds, maybe gone down to gators and that sort of thing. But to get this done, we had to use mules. We used mules, so everything, and we had to park further away, and everything had to go down onto a mule, and then we hired local climbers and backpackers to put things in packs and mules. So everything went down on the mule, and we had someone there with a decibel lever, like sound, that was measuring the sound, and we had to try to keep a film crew quiet, right? So we had to keep it really hush, and we couldn't go in before a certain time of the morning because that's when, and so yeah, those environmental issues kind of go on and on. On the movie Wild, the Reese Witherspoon movie a couple of years ago, I was on a lot of federal land, and probably 65-70% of that movie was on federal land. And we were a week out from filming, and that's when the federal government shut down. That's a nightmare for locations. And of course, we had a wind of this, so we started scouting for private land. Now, had I found it on private land, I would have already done that, because a lot of times you get a lot more leeway on private land. But that was a nightmare. So here I am in the land doing a lot of this stuff in the landscape, and the entire system shuts down, and you weren't getting in. It's not like, they weren't saying, yeah, you go ahead. That's federal government shutdown. It twisted our whole schedule. We were going to do Portland. We were going to do all our federal lands first, and then go to Portland. So now Portland came up first, and that was yeah.
But in answer to your question, when you're out remotely, usually there's the far more complicated permits. I mean, there's issues between two, but that take a lot longer to get approved.
Right. If you have to do it,
But I would say, in general, when you're, tell me if you agree. In general, when you're filming on Indian land or government land, remote land, it's one long and complicated permit.
Yeah.
But when you're filming in a neighborhood, it's 49 itty-bitty little conversations with all the neighbors, and they all have very different needs. And grandma's in a wheelchair in one house, and this other place needs to, has a goldfish that you can't turn off the power for because it's, bubbling the air and the water. And
right.
They're all hard.
Yeah. and a lot of protected places. Try filming in the Grand Canyon. It's not going to happen. Or there was a scene in Into the Wild, and then I'll stop. Into the Wild, and we were in Bullhead City, Arizona. And there's a scene where you kind of look over, and all Sean wanted to do is to have a fire at this guy's campsite. It probably took me 9 weeks and $1,200, $1,500, $1 impact study that was this thick for a small scene in Bullhead City, which is, if you've been to Bullhead, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's 9 weeks and a packet this big. Crazy.
Yeah. We have time for, we're sort of over time, but is there any remaining questions? Yes?
Yes. When scouting in Europe, because I'm from Vienna, would you automatically approach the film commission, the local one? This is my first question. The second is, would you even scout somewhere where there are no incentives, or let's say low incentives?
That's a great question. Did you all hear the question?
Yeah.
She said when filming in Europe, she's from Austria, would you consider scouting in a place with no incentive? And if you are scouting somewhere, do you automatically contact the film commission?
That would be my first call. First call. Film commissioner, yeah.
But you know what? I talk to film commissioners, and there's sometimes say things like, "Yeah, we had some other shoot here, but the location manager never called us." So I think we all do, but I guess some things go under the radar. But I started my career in the '90s at the Oakland Film Commission, so I know what it's like on the other side, and so I always want to let them know. And when even if it's something that doesn't need a permit or it's super tiny, I'll let them know about it just so they can add it to their records because it justifies their budget to the state or the county. I'll give them a economic report of how much we spent in that area. So yeah.
All the jobs then?
Yeah. But it's like you asked earlier, what are the tricks of the trade, and Scott spoke of being organized and knowing how to use your tools. But getting other people to work for you. I mean, it's, yeah, what do you know? How can you help me do my job? How can you do my job for me? Oh, yeah, that's my first call.
But in reality, though, I mean, we would want to scout just because we're looking for that very special location. Incentive or not, we're looking for the special locations. But in today's world, the incentives are so important that the producers won't consider places that don't have incentives. I mean,
I actually disagree with that. I think it's always a question of, I call it, how much do we want it? And there's been times where we want it, and we'll go there with no incentive. But it's a balance, and it's a conversation. Right. And frequently, I'm scouting to prove a negative. I'm scouting everywhere else to prove that one special thing doesn't exist anywhere else.
Right.
And to use Austria as an example, I was on very early development of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and we ended up shooting in Austria. And that was not incentives based. It was because they have a badass opera house that made the scene look really cool. So, the director wanted to shoot there. So, on some of those really big movies, the Star Treks, the Marvels, I mean, they'll try to find the incentive places, but, they will also look for whatever makes the story the best, too.
Mission Impossible Rogue Nation was a really super positive example for me, but sometimes people would not come to us, and it makes things are much easier if they from the very beginning talk to us, because then we can fix things. But in German we say if the child is somewhere in the bath, down in the water, then it's sometimes too late. But if they come in a very early stage,
we say that too.
I think there's also there's kind of a locations arms race going on right now where with the explosion of incentives and combining with the big blockbuster films, there is sort of a race to who can film in the Kremlin first, who can film in the Burj Khalifa first, who can film in the Vatican first. And it's only with the big blockbuster movies where you are really selling spectacle. But I think that's one of the occasions that would draw a film to film in a place without an incentive. So they could be the first of all the studios to say, we blew up the Kremlin.
Right. And it's always something that location people, I think, it's harder and harder these days, but we're always looking for that one location that's never been filmed. Yeah. That's harder to do these days, but...
Sometimes I like to tease the director when we're in LA where everything's been shot and say, this has never been filmed before. Of course, he or she knows that I'm lying through my teeth, but it's always fun. But you know what? Even in LA, there are cool places that truly haven't been filmed before. You just have to get a little bit further. Everybody wants to shoot in downtown or the San Fernando Valley or the West Side, but you go to South LA, you go to the Southeast, you go to some of the neighboring counties, and there's always cool stuff to find. And that's one thing I think all of us love about our jobs is that we get paid to actually go out and explore all these neighborhoods and find new stuff.
Thank you, Scott. We are at our end, so I'm going to turn it back over to our hosts, the Film Commission.